We have team coverage for you on this tonight. NBC News legal analyst Misty Marris is standing by. Let's begin with senior White House correspondent Garrett Haake. So, Garrett, in addition to these 10 co-conspirators, there's also a tip someone sent to the FBI that names the president. What are we learning?
Yeah, listen, to me, these are among the most interesting documents that have been released so far. These ones where we see investigative leads, perhaps, that the FBI was following, but we don't know how they followed them up. There's that email about the 10 alleged co-conspirators. There's another in the form of one of these FBI 302s, basically an intake form for a tip that the FBI got. In this case, from someone claiming to be a limo driver in the Dallas area who drove Donald Trump to the airport. And the tipster says he overheard a phone call that was very disturbing and involved details of Donald Trump talking about a person named Jeffrey. The events were in 1997. This is also the kind of thing that we don't know what follow-up, if any, was done here, but the document itself does seem to be the kind of thing that the DOJ was referring to in that social media post. It was submitted to them, to the FBI, just days before the 2020 election.
Garrett, we are also seeing a new email, which appears to be from former Prince Andrew to Ghislaine Maxwell. Walk us through what that is.
Yeah, in this case, you have an email from around 2001 from then Prince Andrew to Ghislaine Maxwell asking for her help in securing some what he calls inappropriate friends. Maxwell responds saying that up to that point, she was only able to find appropriate friends for the man we believe is Prince Andrew, but whose email is this kind of anonymous, invisible man email address. Ellison, now Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, having been stripped of his royal titles, has been kind of one of the major international casualties of the renewed focus on Epstein. The king having stripped him of his titles as more information came out about his relationship with Epstein over these last several months.
NBC's Garrett Haake in Washington. Thank you. Let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Misty Marris for more on this. So, Misty, I want to ask you about this letter that surfaced, that was released, allegedly from Epstein to Larry Nassar. Ultimately, the Department of Justice has said this is fake. Why would that be released if it was fake? And based on what we've heard from Garrett's reporting and also other conversations with attorneys like Danny Savalos, it seems pretty obvious to people in the know that this wasn't real. How does that get released in something like this?
It seems like it just is part of the file. And because the obligation is to release everything, it would be encompassed in that. But the only thing that was the last thing we saw as far as any investigation into that letter was a request for a handwriting analysis to be done in 2020. The result of that was not done. But as was pointed out, there are some discrepancies. For instance, it's not coming from New York. It's days after Epstein had already died. So there were some issues just at the threshold, and the reliability was questionable. But I think that's the issue with releasing all of these documents is that it truly
it had been sitting at a multi-year high of about 18 years. They're at all-time high. Platinum at a multi-year high. A multi-year high. And so those metals are used in catalytic converters.
Yes.
The one thing EV adoption is slow. We're coming back to internal combustion engines that use catalytic converters, used in dentistry, used in jewelry, a lot of applications. And again, it's that precious metal play.
We got to leave it there.
It's possible that this was investigated,
Thank you
that
so much.
information was given to prosecutors, and prosecutors made a decision based on the evidence, finding that there was not enough to move forward with any charges. But Ellison, the opposite could also be true. And I'm just talking about looking back at the way that this case unfolded. We now know that there was a complaint made to the FBI in 1996. We know about a really unprecedented and really unjustifiable non-prosecution agreement in Southern District of Florida in 2008 by Alex Acosta. So there's a lot of question marks about the handling of these investigations up through 2019 when Jeffrey Epstein commits suicide behind bars, and we never get to a trial. So I do think there's still an opening. There's certain types of cases that could be brought are not barred by the statute of limitations. For instance, any co-conspirator in a sex trafficking operation that could be brought to the extent there's evidence to support it. So unclear at this point, but really looking for more information on this as more documents drop.
Misty, what has stood out to you of the documents we have seen thus far?
Well, any reference to further investigations of both individual potential co-conspirators as well as potentially bringing criminal charges against corporations, that is all new information. We really didn't know where that stood as far as what after Epstein other than Ghislaine Maxwell. And now we're learning more about certain records relating to the flight manifests during a critical time period when Ghislaine Maxwell, relating to what Ghislaine Maxwell was actually charged with and ultimately convicted. So there's a lot that we're learning from these documents, but I don't know if there's ever going to be enough, Ellison, when you're talking about the abuse that was endured by the victims here.
In cases like this, Misty, is there a chance public pressure leads to action?
I think public pressure has already led to action when it comes to actually getting these records in the forefront. You know, we're talking about a law that was passed basically unanimously in order to give the public information about the handling of this case, because there are so many question marks along the way. So certainly, if co-conspirators are ultimately identified, there could be a real rally to bring charges and to ultimately seek justice.
NBC legal analyst Misty Marris, thank you. We appreciate it.